What's up, fellas? It is Holy Thursday, the day before Good Friday, Easter weekend, 2026. Just a Thursday in the shop. Gonna make a little quick video. I had one of the subscribers ask about checking aluminum rods. In one of our previous videos, as you know, I race on an extreme budget, and we run a lot of used parts. And one of the parts that we buy from some of the top tier racers sometimes are connecting rods. And if you remember from the last video, or a couple of videos back, on that used Vini motor that had the big fuel rods in it, it had a real big wrist pin size. It had that big 1-inch 156 pin, and we made some aluminum bushings to neck them down so I could run the more standard 1-inch 094 pin. Well, I went over my numbers, and I kind of did this on the fly. This rod here is 6-inch 785, and I guess my math just wasn't mathing at the time, and this rod actually came a little deep in the hole with this length with the new pistons I got from Justin Aries. The pistons I got are a 1-inch 428 pin height. And what's nice about a Hemi chamber is, you know, you don't have to get hung up on that whole quench deal, because there really is no quench. So I can jockey the compression ratio around to a certain extent with rod length. And for those that don't know, even tuning a top alcohol or a top fuel motor, when you're trying to get distribution right, or if you got one hole that's a little hot, the guys will drop the rod length down. And it's common for guys to have rods in 10 and 20 thousandths up to 50 thousandths increments laying around to move the static compression ratio up and down. But anyway, after checking my math, and I'm going to show you a little app I use to check compression ratio here in a minute, but picked up another set of rods, picked up a set of GRP rods from a pro mod team that I know well, that cycle their rods out every 20 runs, 15 to 20 runs. And to me, there's usually a lot of life left in them. And the main thing on an alcohol rod you want to check is center to center for stretch. And what I use, I made a little fixture up. It's basically like a gauge block out of aluminum here. So I got some flats machined on the bottom. And the proper way to do this would probably be set it up on our granite surface plate. But I just got it right here on this is a machine table that my boring bar sits on. That my quick way machine sits on that I use for pouring blocks. And I just wiped it off just to kind of demonstrate how I use this. So it's a regular height gauge that you would use for checking length of parts or whatever you want to check, height-wise, to a precision extent. It has like a last word style dial indicator on it, similar to what we use on the Bridgeport to tram the head in. And so what I do is, and I already set this up. And how you would do this? Every good machine shop should have a set of gauge blocks. These are precision gauge blocks in different sizes. Let's say you had a rod that was 6 inches that you wanted to check. Well, you would just set up your gauge blocks. And you would dial it in 6 inches, sweep your indicator, and then you could check precision length of something else that's 6 inches. So that's basically how you set up a height gauge up. You set it up with gauge blocks. And there probably could be a better method for checking these, but this works really pretty good for checking both twist and length. And how I do, I made just a pin up to simulate my wrist pin, and this is turned down to the size of my ID of my rod journal. So this is a Hemi rod, so it's 2.5. I have another one for a big block that's 2 3/8. And then we got one for a small block, 2 1/4. So you'd have to turn up different ones for different rods, but really the only motor that I'm buying used aluminum rods is for my motor. Obviously, if a customer's motor came through the shop, I would be making them buy brand new rods. But for me, I'll take my chances. If it kicks the rod out, I'm the one that's got to fix it, so it's all good there. So anyway, I just sit my rod on, and I'm going to try to demonstrate this. I just hold it up against the side here. This is nice and true. Turn this up on the CNC. And then once I set my top dead center with my gauge blocks, I could just sweep the rod. And like right now, you can see, it's on 0. And after I set up the height, I zero the gauge, so I could just go rod to rod and check the size. Let's see here. I'm trying to hold it with one hand, it's a little tough. You have to be careful to not move anything. Keep it in one spot and sweep your indicator. And 0. And then what I'll do, I'll take the pin out and I'll swap it around to the other side. I got a nice, it's a tight fit, not a press fit. I mean, pressing it by hand, there's no swap there. And check my rod there, sweeping it back and forth. So I know by spinning the rod around, if I'm getting 0 on both sides, I know the rod doesn't have any twist in it. And then I'll just go through a full set of rods like that. And if I find a variation of more than a thou and a half, then I won't run them. But if I find them where, like in this case, I've already gone through the rods and all 8 are dead nuts, 0. So I think they got a lot of life left in them. I'll run these for another 25 runs now in my motor, and then I'll pull them out and I'll cycle them out with another set of rods that we've checked that came out of somebody else's motor that had 25 runs on it. But like I said, the quench is something that's kind of non-existent in a Hemi because of the full open chamber of the sphere circle. I'm actually going to run this down in the hole 20 thousandths with that 6-inch 875 length rod for our first motor to start the compression ratio out at 11:1. Again, a competitive top alcohol motor, probably up around 13:1. But to get started and get this car dialed in, I want to keep it pretty conservative. Plus the tuning window's a lot wider. Dropping that static compression ratio down gives you a big window to swing and miss. Where when you get up to that high compression ratio, you got to have everything dead on, or you're going to burn something up real quick. But just wanted to show you where quench does matter. Just finishing up that Ford we were working on. This is that it's a 410-inch Windsor. Just finished up the short block, and this is the motor that burned up on nitrous. I think I showed you guys the pistons had a big old dome in it, and their tune got away from them. And here, let me walk out here. I know I showed the piston in another video, but I just wanted to go over the whole quench deal. Yeah, so here's some of the pistons that came out of that guy's motor, and I attribute it to way too high a static compression, and definitely not having his tune spot on. So it came in here. I'm not a big nitrous guy. We've built a lot of nitrous motors, but what I intend to do or try to do when guys bring in nitrous motors, they tell me, like this motor was being sprayed with 400 horse worth of nitrous. I'm gonna try to get him another 100 horsepower on motor, so maybe he doesn't have to spray it so hard. So my modifications, let's turn this over a little bit. I went with flat top piston, and now we're we're concerned about quench. And what I like to do with the flat tops, like I'm running this one 10 thousandths out of the hole, and I'll control my squish with the head gasket thickness. I'll run a 42 thousandths head gasket. So being 10 out of the hole, I'll have 32 thousandths between the deck of my piston and the quench area of the head. This is a wedge head, and this is where you're interested in quench. And getting the quench right is a difference between making all the power you can or leaving some on the table. So, well, that's a story for another day. But the Hemi isn't like that. So the Hemi, like I said, is easy to move the compression ratio around with rod lengths. This, not so much. A wedge motor, you let the quench get away from you more than about 45 thousandths and less, you start losing power. On some of the limited circle track motors, I've actually ran them as close as zero deck with only an 18 thousandth steel shim head gasket. Now you got to be careful when you run them that close. You can't have loose piston to wall, because if you got any kind of rock, you're going to contact the deck of the head, the quench area of the head, with the deck of the piston. Now, back in the day, guys used to say, oh, you want to set the motor up when it's wide open and the rods are stretching, that the pistons are just touching the head. Well, I never bought onto that. I don't think it's good to build anything where parts are going to touch. So this is a steel rodded motor. It's not going to get a lot of stretch. It's got a big long 6 1/4 inch steel rod. Again, this is a 351 Windsor base motor, drag motor, going in some kind of 10-inch tire drag car with nitrous. And it's got the trick flow high port heads. I believe these are 225 cc trick flows, good head. These are the ones that were all banged up that we welded up and fixed the chambers on and had to put a couple new valves in and so forth. But that's where you're worried about quench. Your wedge motor, big block Chevys, semi-Hemi, but straight wedge, small block Chevy, small block Ford, your wedge Mopars. Pay close attention to quench and get your rod length dialed in to 1 set rod length. But I just wanted to show a little fixture that we use to check rod length. It's pretty easy to make. If somebody's interested and wants to make one up, I can send you specs on what to get for a piece of aluminum, and you can just turn one up on an engine lathe. And like I said, I got some flats milled there, so it sits down nice and flat. And all you need is a cheap height gauge that you can buy from MSC or Enco or wherever. About $100 for a height gauge, and you can check anything you want. But that's what we use. Again, it's Thursday. I'm dragging ass this week. Haven't got a ton done. The bell housing did show up. We'll walk out there really quick. The bell housing did show up for the Lenco. The Hemi bell housing we bought, that $300 bell housing. And it's huge by large. I'm going to have to do some surgery on that. But I haven't had much time this week before Easter. I'm trying to finish customers' jobs up. But there it is. So it came in the other day, and I just mocked it up, bolted it on, and it actually still has an SFI tag, which is cool. It's out of date, but I don't think they're going to be as strict for a converter bell housing as they would be like for a bell housing containing a clutch. But it definitely doesn't fit between the frame rails. It's way too wide. So I'm going to make some measurements. We're going to pull this bell housing off, and fortunately it's got a starter pocket, which I don't need. It does have the steel band in it, the safety band, so that's cool. But if you notice how much material there is on the other side of the bolt holes, I'm going to set this up on the CNC mill, and we're going to profile mill this out, and I'll show you what we're going to do with that when I get it set up. But got it on, got it mocked up. I got a little disgusted with it. I almost thought about going back to a clutch setup, seeing how this didn't fit in the car well. But we're going to stick with it, because I do think the automatic's going to have an advantage with a low buck, low horsepower motor. So, but anyway, just a quick video showing you how I check rod length, to check used rods. There's always an abundance of used connecting rods, and I do pretty good. I probably maybe 1 set out of 10 sets so far I found that I didn't use after I bought. So Well, I'm going to try to get on the Hemi. If I get all caught up, I'm going to try to get the Hemi crankshaft on the balancer, and I'll continue on our videos putting that motor together. But until then, fellas, have a good Friday tomorrow, and we'll talk to you soon. Oh yeah, before I let you guys go, I just wanted to show you how I do some of the math computing, make it easy. This is one of the pistons from Justin. And as you can see in the box, I already got a ton of notes where I was in the shop trying to figure out some things to make work, seeing what I could use this piston for different combinations, because I have a couple different crankshafts, different strokes. And like I said, the main thing I want to use shelf parts and just jockey my rod length around. I was looking for a common pin height, and I think with this shelf piston at 1 inch 4/28, we're pretty close. But I'll show you what I was saying. My math wasn't math, and I think I made a little mistake when I was figuring out trying to use those fuel rods. But also got my rings. I exclusively use Ackerley and Childs, which was part of the old Childs and Albert for their extreme piston rings, and we use that Dykes top ring. It's a 017 Dykes top, and a 1/16 second ring, and a normal 3/16 oil ring. It's a blown motor that's going to have some good boost, so I use a high tension oil ring, where if I was building an NA motor or a stock car motor, I would use a low drag, low tension. But you always want to put a high tension oil ring to control the best oil control you could have. You don't want, the last thing you want is oil seeping up in the combustion chamber, because that'll wreak havoc on your tune and amongst a lot of other things. But what I do, if you just Google compression ratio calculator, and I actually got this saved on my phone, so when I'm out in the shop. But Summit Racing, this is what I use. It has a really good app for a compression ratio calendar, and it's just a fill in the blank deal. And I'm going to put in right now what I got on our Hemi. We're a 375 bore. The little motor is going to be 3-inch 750 stroke. The cylinder head volume on that Vini head, we CC'd it, and by putting those big block Chevy valves in it, we CC'd it at 150, but we actually got another 5 cc's by getting that 2-inch 400 valve up in the chamber a little more. So we ended up with a 145 cc chamber. Effective dome volume, that's the actual cc of the dome. And these particular domes are huge by large, as far as I'm concerned, for that big ass Vini head. It almost looks like a 426, almost like a super stock dome, but it has a lot of meat, and the ring's still pretty far down. But anyway, it has a 79 cc dome. So we put in 79, and well, it asks you. So it's if it was a dish, you had to put a plus. If it's a dome, you got to put minus 79. Deck height. So I'm going to show you how I'm figuring out my deck height right now. And we should actually do that on a piece of paper first, so I can show you. Well, the deck of the motor is 10-inch 225 is what the deck height is. But they're wanting the deck clearance where we are. So right now, with that particular piston, we are 25. Well, with this piston and that 875 rod, that 6-inch 875 rod, that put us 20 thousandths in the hole. So we're going to put 025. Compressed gasket. We're using a copper head gasket with either hoops or wire. I'm not sure yet what we're going to do on that, but regardless, I like to run a 60 thousandths gasket if I can. I think that Vini head, it's a little tough to find gaskets in different sizes. You know, like a big block Chevy, you could almost get them in 10 thousandths increments. I thought I could do that with this Vini. It doesn't look like I can, so we're just going to go right now. Let's just check it with an 040, because we need at least 60 thousandths worth of clearance with aluminum rod for stretch. But regardless, again, we're not dealing with quench, so even if we stretch 60, we still have a ton of room between the chamber and the piston head. and it's asking how many cylinders. 8-cylinder. Calculate. So there we're coming up with a 12.26 compression ratio. That's a little high for where I want to start with this first motor. So I'm going to drop that down. We'll go to a 62 gasket. And that drops us down to 11.5, and that's perfect. That's about where I want to start this, and then it gives you the cubic inch. We'll call it a 451, 450.99. Yeah, it's pretty handy. That other rod we had was 50 thousandths shorter yet. So basically that would change our deck clearance to 75 in the hole. Drop our compression down to 226. So there's a lot you could do with rod lengths if you could find a common pin height that'll work. Again, I could change this over to a 4-inch 150 because I have another crank of a 4-inch 150 stroke. I'd have to put shorter rods, and I'd have to put a 6-inch 700 rod in there. But with the same 62 thousandths gasket, 75 in the hole, just changing the stroke, goes up to 499 inches, kicks us back to 11 1/4. So, but it's a cool app. Like I said, all you gotta do is Google compression ratio calculator, and the first one that comes up is the Summit app. And like I said, I loaded it in my phone, and it really eliminates a lot of guesswork. But that's what I use to figure out some of my math. Hope I explained it where you could understand it. All right, so I just wanted to run in here to the home office, show you that, and got the rings. We got our pistons. If I can get caught up, let's get that crank. Let's get everything weighed up and get the crank on the balancer, and hopefully we can start putting that short block together this weekend. And I'll keep going with the videos as we get that together. We're getting closer, day by day. All right, guys, let you go this time for good. I'll see ya.